What is going on, you all? I have a very, very special treat for you today. I've been saving this for quite some time, actually. You're about to witness the greatest heist ever pulled off in Evony history. And it was done by one player, me, King DX. And I'm going to break down exactly how I did it. Before we start, I think it's important that we do take a few moments to go over the brief history so you understand how we got to this place. There's going to be a lot of questions, and I'm going to try to answer some of those before I start to see some of those questions pop up in the comments. I'm going to try to be very smart about the words I choose. Just so you know, in anything I talk about, obviously there's always two sides of a story, right? So I'm going to try to provide as much proof as I can. I know you all are smart. You'll be able to read it and you'll be able to decipher what's bullshit and what's reality. If you disagree with something, hey, reach out. I may still have additional evidence to support what I'm talking about. What I don't want to do, though, is blow the video up by having just a ton of text for you to read, and that's just not going to be a fun experience for you. I want you to be able to sit back, enjoy it, and just really have a great laugh about this just crazy scenario that I was able to pull off. So first, let me hit you with a bit of history. So, as you know, I'm King DX. As we're going through this, you're going to see sometimes where I'm posting screens where there's a player who will have an AFO tag or he will have an FFO tag. Whenever you see that tag, that is me. I enjoy changing my name. I get a kick out of it. I like trolling. So that's what that is. So if you ever see an AFO tag or FFO tag, it's me. It's DX. It's either Prince, it's King. That's me, just so we know. All right, so starting off from where we started. So about 2020, I started playing Evony. Just like a lot of people, I was at home, worked from home during the COVID pandemic. I started off in a very small alliance, just like a lot of you all probably did. I originally was playing this game for fucking puzzles. Like, let's be real. I saw some puzzles, I was like, oh, that looks easy, and that's how I got into Evony. The alliance I was with was called AFO, All for One, really small alliance. And we had a leader that the leader just simply did not want to fight anyone, right? Early on, no one knew what was going on. We were really small keeps. And as we were starting to grow a little bit in power and we were starting to learn that this was more of a puzzle game, our leader was really adamant about never fighting anybody back. And to be fair, we were getting burnt almost daily. We had a couple players that were just like radicalized and they were just going around the server just, burning the bejesus out of anybody that got in their way, basically. And we had a couple people that had played the game before, so they had some knowledge, but that wasn't really being disseminated across the server like you may expect. So early on, we got burnt. We essentially got farmed by a lot of bigger players, and we were the fuel for these bigger keeps to grow. Eventually, I started learning how to play the game a little bit, and I was getting a little bit better. And the bigger alliance on the server at the time, they weren't PHX, but for the sake of saying this, we'll just call them PHX. They were a different alliance that ended up becoming PHX. But Phoenix, PHX, is going to be really important in this story. So as I started becoming a better and better player, we had a big player from the biggest alliance on our server at the time. This is server 326. Phoenix, that was willing to come down and show us the ropes. So this player was Master Gun. Shout out to Master Gun. Taught me so much stuff. He came down, taught us how to ghost, taught us how to do PvP, and I was able to learn a lot. Now, my background is I've been a competitive gamer for years. I've gone to tournaments all over the world. I played competitive games. I played Counter-Strike competitively. I played Street Fighter competitively, Marvel vs. Capcom. Like, I've done quite a few games competitively. So I enjoy that kind of back and forth, that strategic way of thinking. That's exciting to me. So when I had a moment to kind of stretch my legs and really go all in, that was kind of fun, and I enjoyed it. So one of the tactics I found out that bigger alliances will do is they'll send someone to your alliance, not necessarily to teach you, more so to vet you. They come through and they drop all this knowledge. Look how many monsters we can kill. And it's really all kind of a disguise to be like, hey, if you want to kill more monsters, you should come to our alliance. And what they do is they try to set up this dependency, right? Where you need them to protect you and to kill monsters on your behalf. And I think a lot of times that's what these bigger alliances do. They send somebody down to your alliance to try to essentially break your alliance up and fold them in to their bigger umbrella. I'm not saying big alliances are bad, but from what I've seen over the years, typically those big alliances are led by some type of big player. Those big players always have some type of ego, and they essentially try to manipulate you almost through solidarity. Like, they want you to feel as though you are a family, but at the end of the day, you're a family because they've done something for you. And if you start to shy away from how they think, now you're disloyal, right? So that's how a lot of these bigger alliances work. But anyway, moving on. So this bigger player, Master Gun, left, went back to his alliance. And obviously my alliance, we remembered this. I was an R4. My R5 still didn't want us to engage with anybody. But like I said, I got good. And we had a lot of players that kept getting attacked. And I wanted to do something about it. So I started fighting back some of these other alliances. Eventually, by the time I got to about maybe 40, 50 million power, I had already gotten my server wings. I was like one of the first 10, maybe 15 people on the server to get server wings. And consistently, back to back to back, SVSs, even with me not being the strongest player on my server, I was consistently able to hit top 5, top 10, never getting negative points. I was literally just in it. And it was something that I was really proud of. We had on our server like a treaty, right? Where the top alliances would meet. To be honest, time escapes me a little bit, so I can't remember back then if we were doing top 5 or top 10 alliances. But the way we did the king rotations, outside of the first couple where there were actually battles for them, what we would do is if you were in a top 5 alliance, you could be king. Or you would be eligible for the members of the committee to vote for someone in your alliance to be king. So at the time, there was an alliance named Ice. Ice is going to be really important to the story as well. And they didn't want Ice to become king because the leader of Ice, this guy named Icebo, racist piece of shit, he was so much of a troll that no one wanted him to be king, even though his alliance was one of the top alliances. So what PHS did is they kind of manipulated things. They made sure to vote for me because I was eligible to be king over Bo because they just wanted to make sure Bo could never get in. So it was somewhat a slight manipulation. Now, Bo got mad because he felt that my alliance AFO did not meet the requirements to be king because we weren't a top 5 alliance. However, the meeting time happened right when my alliance was in BOG or BOC at the time. So as you know, if you're in a battlefield and people are taking damage, it lowers your overall power. So instead of us being a top 5 alliance at the moment when they were deciding to vote me for king, we were like maybe top 6 because we had dropped maybe 50, 70 million in power because we were having a pretty bad battle in one of the BOCs. So Bo tried to use this loophole to say that PHS was cheating and they were manipulating. He got really pissy about it. He didn't like it. So later on, I become king. He's still salty about it. And while we're all hanging out at AFO, I'm signed off for today. One of his players, Atler, comes through, completely burns down our whole alliance. About 90% of our alliance gets hit in that whole thing. And it started off a pretty big war amongst the alliances. So it started off this chain of events that just went on for a pretty long time. So when this was happening, a lot of people in my alliance wanted me to remain as the R5 because I moved into R5 when I became king. And that really wasn't something I wanted to do. And the player who attacked us from Ice, this player Atler, he was spending a lot of money. He was dumb as a bag of bricks. But he was really powerful. And the truth of the matter is, we didn't have the manpower, the raw damage potential to do anything about him. And I felt it would be safer for us if we were to merge with potentially a bigger alliance. And that was all out of safety for everyone else. It wasn't from my perspective of let's use this bigger alliance to get bigger and stronger. It was more so okay, I would prefer to protect the people on my squad. If this makes sense for everyone, let's do that. So we merged with PHX, about half of us. Some people stay back because they really just do not want to fight at all. And When we merged, honestly, it was a big mistake. We didn't have any R4 representation, and we ended up going to war with ICE. We fought ICE for a while, and so it was PHX versus ICE. And what happened was we got to this point where ICE was setting our tiles. We were doing full guerrilla warfare on this server. And what we noticed is that none of the other alliances were jumping in to help fight ICE, that it clearly violated the server rules. Not only were people not jumping in to help fight against ICE, alliances still had NAPs with ICE. They were actively stealing NAPs with somebody who had clearly violated the server rules. Now, this is important because later on in the story, we're going to have another major violation of NAPs, and every other alliance is going to sit on their hands and feet, and they're not going to do anything. So, we fight ICE for quite some time. This goes on for months. Eventually, we start bringing in the other alliances. We're like, okay, we're taking all this damage. We can't farm, but we're also doing all the PvP work during SVS. Well, how about we just farm the whole server? And that's what happened. We just started attacking everyone. And eventually, after enough damage was done to the whole server, there was an agreement made. ICE stepped away, and they basically backed down, and the war ended. However, PHX made those deals with ICE without any consideration of AFO. There was no compensation. We got nothing. Our players still lost a ton. It's just like, it's water under the bridge. Let's forget about it. I'm gonna be honest. Do some shit to me, I'm probably not gonna forget about it. So I wasn't happy with it. I reached out to ICE, told ICE I wanted compensation. He tried to make up the story about it. They didn't have it. So I left PHX and went on my own revenge tour to get it from him. And I beat every single resource out of ICE for months. And I eventually got all those resources back. Once I did, the leader of ICE, Ice Falcon, who tried to hit me numerous times. He was a pretty big player on the server as well. At the time, he might have been maybe top 5, maybe even top 3 at that time. Could never catch me. And eventually, he got sick of trying to catch me. And I had burnt enough of his players, so he decided that we dead it, and we go about our way. I got my resources back, giving them back to our players, and he wasn't getting tormented by me anymore. So I think him and ICE was happy as well. So I ended up going back to PHX. And while I'm back at PHX, I'm just doing my thing. Back to PvP, living up, enjoying things. And I was pretty good. Everything was cool. But what I started noticing is that we were just getting sloppy. Our biggest player on the server is named Wizard Zed. Used to be named Chrome. I like to call him Wizard Sped, but you can call him whatever you want. He straight up sucks. I mean, I'll try to put some numbers up. This guy just fucking sucks, man. He's a big that spent all this money, but every SVS we go out there, and this dude, I mean, at 9 billion power would hit a 1 billion power player and lose almost like 300, 400 million points. It was insane how bad this dude was. I mean, he would bring in 2 billion points and lose 2.5. And this was just a consistent pattern of his. And what started happening was all the alliance was doing it. It didn't matter how much you begged them, like, hey, don't go out right now. There's, this K33 running around. It's K35. And obviously, like I'm saying, this is early on in our server, right? Like, there's these big threats out there. Don't go out there. Don't unbubble. Like, don't do this. And people would go out and consistently get wrecked. What was crazy about it, though, is that when members of Phoenix did it, there were never any repercussions, right? It was just like, oh, we tried our best. We lost. But when other alliances did it, oh, did PHX get pissed. Oh, we're going to put this person KOS. You better kick him out of the alliance. We're going to burn the whole server down. Any single time anybody else made a mistake, they would overreact. And you've probably seen it on your server. These bigs, they make a mistake. Oh, did something happen? Didn't see that. But the moment the smallest of players makes a mistake, oh, you stepped out of line and now we're just going to torture the server for it. Everyone has to do push-ups, right? And that's what I was dealing with consistently. And no matter how I tried to get people on track and, hey, you can try this, you can do this, they just didn't care. And the shit I started witnessing there, man, I'm talking about bumping people out of top 5 during SVS to prevent them from getting their wings, point trading, all the stuff they used to get mad about. Like, oh, if we catch you guys point trading, we're going to destroy your whole alliance. They were fucking point trading. Oh, if you go out there and you lose this amount of points, we're going to fucking burn you down. We're going to make you KOS. They were doing the same exact shit. And I got sick of it. I got sick of it. And not only that, before we would do like our SVSs, no one would purge PHX. Everybody was scared shitless. And they would say, oh yeah, you can purge us. We don't care. But you know what happens? You go to purge one of their players, then oops, oh, I just thought you were attacking. I didn't realize it was purge time, and now you've been zero. So everyone was scared of them. But I wasn't. I don't like bullies, and I didn't like being a part of it. So right before I left PHX, I got invited to a group on Discord by Wizard Zed, Fickle Rick, Dresty, and someone else. I can't remember at the time. And I'll put that up on the screen. And the name of the Discord channel was the Grand Villainy. Grand Villainy plan. Scheme, plan, whatever it was. And basically, they wanted to torch our entire server. They wanted to torch it. As they said, rule the server with an iron fist. I wasn't cool with that. I was focused on PvP. If we go torching everybody, how does that help us with PvP? We need people to work together so we can win PvP. So initially when I saw it, I thought, okay, yeah, I get it. I understand why we might want to burn this player and that player. And admittedly, I was selfish myself. I honestly just wanted to burn Falcon to the ground. That's all I really cared about. I'm like, let's just fucking burn Falcon, if I'm being completely honest. I even in that thread, and I wish I had the full thread for you. Unfortunately, I don't. There is a part where I say, okay, cool. Like, my biggest concern is, like, how do we take out Falcon? Because I really didn't give a fuck about what they were talking about. I just really wanted to wreck Falcon, if I'm being completely honest. But I wasn't going to go along with it because I didn't think it was right. And one of the groups they wanted to destroy was VNF, which is a Vietnamese alliance that they just had problems with. I don't even know why they had problems with them. I think they stole monsters every once in a while, but they didn't like them. So they wanted to torch them to the ground. The same thing that happened to my alliance, AFO. We were minding our own fucking business. Somebody got pissy, and then all my players are destroyed. I don't think that's an honorable way to play. And I was just losing more and more respect. So I left them. And I left. They begged me to come back. I have the mails from Wizard Zed himself where he says, literally, come back and we can burn VNF to the ground. That should be on your screen right now. They wanted to torch VNF, but I wasn't down for it. So I was like, nope. And what happened during, KE or during SVS, if I saw their bubbles drop, I purged them. If it was KE and the bubble drop, I hit them. I just didn't give a fuck. I'm like, no, you're going to get fucking treated like everybody else on this damn server, because it doesn't make any sense that because you have a big in your alliance that the rest of your players get to play like shit, your big gets to play like shit, and everyone else gets penalized. I don't like that. I don't like that bully mentality stuff. I just don't like it. So did that back and forth for a while, just hitting them, and eventually they did what they said they were going to do. They acted on their grand villainy plan. There was a member of VNF that had been kicked out months ago, right? On our server, he had been kicked out months ago. And this player, I guess, hit another alliance during NAP. Now, this player wasn't a part of an alliance. He was no longer a part of VNF. He had already been kicked out months ago. However, Phoenix used this as an excuse to go then attack VNF and wipe them out during NAP. And it's Dave Chappelle has this funny story where he talks about this pimp, right? Where the pimp would beat his girls up and then fix them up, and they'd be more happy that they were fixed, right? And they forget about all the ass whoopings they took. So that's what Phoenix would do. They would burn your keep down and say, hey, sorry about that, buddy, let's patch you up. And that's how they bring you into their little cult. And that's what they did. They burned VNF to the ground. So when they did that shit, that was a violation of our server agreement. Now we have another alliance that has gone rogue and decided to burn down our whole server. How did my alliance respond? And I apologize, not how did my alliance respond. How did my server respond? They did absolutely nothing. They did nothing. They basically let Phoenix get away with it. Everybody except me. And I went to war with PHX. Not only did I go to war with them, I torched cities, zeros, countless zeros. Never lost a troop for months, 6 months, me by myself, 2.4 billion power against people that's 7, 8, 9, 10 billion power. I fought them for months by myself. I hit their relics, I hit their tiles, I hit everything I could. Now, you might be saying, well, if you hit all their stuff, that makes you KOS. Well, wrong, because when I hit their stuff isn't actually until they made me KOS. Now, this is the craziest part of this whole story. So, here we have an alliance that has now destroyed another alliance during NAP, right? Originally, when I was going after them, I was really just going after the bubble drops and, kind of like KE. I wasn't being malicious, right? Like, if you only had like 50 million troops or something like in power, I didn't really care. But what I started doing was, not only is your bubble down, but you also have 5 billion in resources. Well, now I'm taking those 5 billion resources. Once I started doing that, they started to get really fucking pissed. They didn't like that too much. They didn't like a taste of their own medicine. So once things had finally calmed down, and I stopped attacking PHX, mainly because I got bored and I was starting to get bored of the game as a whole, I got invited to join the second biggest alliance on our server, which was ROG at the time. I joined that alliance, and I was not KOS when I joined that alliance. Why was I not KOS? Because I had not attacked them outside of KE. I had not attacked them outside of Purge time or SVS, maybe during the bubble drop. And I also hadn't attacked any tiles, any relics, anything. I had been fighting them based on the agreed upon rules. I joined ROG. In less than about 2 hours of me being at ROG, they sent a letter to ROG saying that if they took me in, that Wizard Z would burn down their whole alliance and I get kicked out. Not only did I get kicked out, after I got kicked out, because mind you, we have like this whole server thing. So if someone goes KOS, anything like that, there's a whole conversation about it. I get kicked out of ROG, which, hey, fine, you want to protect your people. You don't want to be in the middle of the drama. Cool, not a big problem. But then PHX says, matter of fact, he's also KOS. So when they decided I was KOS, I also decided I was KOS. And then I started treating them like I was KOS. And boy, did I fuck them up. And I got receipts. Hundreds of billions of RSS taken directly from Phoenix right into my pocket. I fucked them up. And they weren't happy about it. I did that all the way until eventually we had a server merger. And don't worry, we're finally getting to the good part. Now, when we had our server merger, we merged with server 153. And I'm gonna be honest, I was kind of tapped out of the game at that point. I didn't have any reason to come back, man. I was living my life, man. I was traveling all over the country. Oh my God, I love Peru, man. Peru's so amazing. I was loving life. I only was signing in to put my bubble on just as a fuck you to them. Like, I'll never drop my bubble, right? Like, you'll never catch me. I only opened this bubble to give you guys the smoke you want. And then I put it back on. And they hated it. I was literally a one-man army. So, server merger happens. I'm chilling. Like I said, traveling around, not worried about anything. I have everybody reaching out to me. Hey, do you want to join our alliance? You're a pretty big keep. You're just sitting there by yourself. What's going on? I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm chilling. Eventually, this really small alliance named FFI reaches out to me and they ask me if I want to join. Now, immediately, they reminded me immediately of AFO. Matter of fact, the guy who originally reached out to me had like the same profile image as like my former leader. And there were just some other little nuances that I said, maybe I can go help you guys out, because I was actually bigger than everybody in their alliance, but I figured I'll go do some rallies for them or something like that. And mind you, we had other players that came from 326 that had been KOS, but they decided to let that stuff go when we did the server merger. Until they realized that I was in another alliance. That's when Wizard Sped, the former leader of PHX that had now merged with the LSD alliance, reached out to FFI and said, if you don't kick him, we're going to burn down your whole alliance during NAP. Now, mind you, he's not the leader of LSD. He's just an R4. He shouldn't be able to make those threats on behalf of LSD, but he did. And LSD sat back and they said, well, let's really be honest about this. I mean, is there really a democracy? Are we going to really act like there's politics here? That's what they said. So I went back and forth with FFI. FFI reached out to the king. Is this guy KOS? Is he not KOS? Wizard Zed was telling them that I was KOS. King's like, no, I verified with leadership. You aren't KOS, so you're free to come here and hang out, do whatever you want. But he just kept threatening them. So I left. I was like, nah, it's cool, man. Like, let me do my own thing. Don't worry about it. So when that happened, there was something that Zed and the rest of his doofuses really weren't aware of. And that was months prior, I found out just how easy it was to steal Evony accounts. See, I'm a software engineer. Been doing it for quite a long time. I mean, I built a few systems. For a while, I had a system where I could actually detect a bubble drop. It's some of the hardest code I ever wrote in my life. And I would get alerts. It had a lot of false negatives, to be honest with you, but I did a lot of things when it came to Evony. I actually had a lot of tools to assist me with some of the stuff that I did. One of the things that I decided I wanted to try out was social engineering. I was wondering, could social engineering work to help me recover accounts that may have been abandoned? And it did. Helped me recover quite a few of them, actually. One that's actually even more powerful than my current keep. That is just hanging out on the server. It's been hanging out for quite some motherfucking time, to be honest. Here's a couple images of that now and what that looks like. So, in case you're wondering how to do it, in case you have a couple of abandoned keep sitting around your server, I'm going to go ahead and break down how it works. And I can say this because I literally don't give a fuck about Evony. My main account, I'm going to delete. And I'll just kind of sit back and from time to time pop a little 7-day bubble. That other account has so many millions of gems, it doesn't even matter. And I'll just watch for a bit. So, if Evony bans my main account, it literally doesn't matter. I think on Christmas, I'll probably open up all the resources on that account anyway. And then dismiss all my troops, just as a final fuck you to them, to make sure they never get anything from me. But let's focus on getting other accounts. So, when you reach out to customer support, all you got to do is say, hey, I got locked out on my account. Can't figure out how to get in. My phone was hacked, blah, blah, blah. Make up some shit, right? Cool. What support is going to do is they're going to reach out and they're going to first ask you, oh, do you have any receipts? Do you have anything to prove what was your last purchase? Now, if it's been long enough, if the account's been deactivated long enough, you can make up some excuse for why you can't pull some bank information up or whatever. Like that's simple enough to figure out how to navigate your way around. If you can't, then this probably won't work for you anyway. Once you do that, what they're going to do is they're going to come back and they're going to say, okay, well, can you give us information about the keep itself? Can you give us the levels of the buildings? Can you give us information about the generals? This is some of the easiest shit I've ever done in my life. Look, trust me, I've been responsible for getting into a ton of shit over the years. A ton. Sometimes it was my job to figure out how to penetrate stuff. Like, it really was. This was some of the easiest work I've ever done in my life. So, let me break it down. So, the account Fisty, who we'll talk about shortly. Fisty was a former member of Phoenix that got zeroed, actually, during SVS because his bubble dropped. And they were like, no one purge him. If you purge him, we'll KOS you. Instead, we're just going to give him a green bubble. What a surprise. He got hit and we lost that SVS. Who could have saw that coming? Anyway, so Fisty was an abandoned account. And I knew he was abandoned. And I also knew he was good friends with certain people on PHX. So what I did is I reached out to customer support, said, hey, I lost my account. Need to get it back. They said, give us some information. Same information I just told you they asked me for. I attacked his keep while nobody was looking. Middle of the night. Hit his keep. His keep was level 35. Now, if you've played Evony and you've gotten to level 35, you know that's a big milestone in the game, right? So when you get to level 35, there are just certain things that you look out for. 35, to get to any level, right, you have to have the walls that are below it. So for me to get to K35, I have to have at least walls that are level 34. When I attacked this keep, I realized his archer tower was level 35. Well, why do you have a level 35 archer tower? You have a level 35 archer tower because you want to be able to have a level 35 archer camp so you can make T14 troops. So I was able to start easily piecing some information together. Like, most people aren't going to go past Forge 33 early on, because there's no reason to get past Forge 33, because you get your what's the armor that begins with a AR? I don't know. Can't remember the name off the top of my head, but that armor you can start making at level 33. So once I thought about that, I was like, okay, his Forge is probably at 33, Wall's probably at 35, Archer Camp's probably at 35, Archer Tower's probably at 35. He'll probably want to have mounted troops so he can do some type of attack and kill monsters. So probably has a barracks at 35, probably has a tavern. Like, I was able to start piecing stuff together, right? Or I meant stables. And I was able to figure out, I guess, every single building, and I got access to his account. He was third, fourth account I think I got access to. Yeah, super simple, barely an inconvenience. So got that account, joined back into PHX, and I just watched. And man, it was so easy, man. I'm talking about, like, it was so easy. Like, all I have to do is, like, watch their Arctic castles, right? And then I just click on it and I just say troops. And I say, what type of troops are in this building? Okay, looks like they have a bunch of mountain. Looks like they have a bunch of ground. Okay, how do I make a perfect march to counter that? Boom, semi-march, never do a scout. Boom, your whole shit is gone. And I've lost 5 million power, maybe, and I just heal it right back up. You've lost 5 million troops. I just did that all across the board. I mean, I tormented the fuck out of these people, man. I really did. So, I have Fisty now. And Fisty has been inactive a little bit because I've also been inactive. I've been traveling the world. I haven't been studying that game. But I get kicked out of FFI, and, well, didn't sit right with me. Now, to be fair, like I said, I didn't really care, but it's like, well, why are you going to threaten the small alliance? You could have threatened me. My bubble's not going to drop. And see, that's the problem, because my bubble wouldn't drop. That's why they wanted to threaten this small alliance, because they couldn't hit me. And when people with power can't get what they want, they lash out. So they got pissy and they took it out on FFI. So I decided I was going to take shit out on them. And that's how we get to the heist. Now, Fisty at this point in time was about 300 and so million in power. He was still technically a member of PHX. And the members of PHX had moved on and merged with LSD. So I needed to get myself into LSD with this account. How do I do that? Well, I didn't want to ask for anything, because I knew that asking for anything would automatically make me suspicious. So I wasn't going to ask for anything. What I did instead is that I waited until I knew we were at the height of one of our SVSs. I took Fisty, because he luckily was low enough in power. I took him to the temples, and I started fighting around the temples, posting scout reports in the world chat, just doing anything I could to draw attention to myself. I never specifically reached out to any member of LSD. I just simply played the game, knowing that they would see me as a valuable tool that they could bring over. Sure enough, as soon as that SVS is over, I get a message from Kareda, who, to be fair, never had an issue with the dude. He's a cool dude. He messages me, and he's like, hey, we're going to go ahead and bring you over to LSD. I'm like, cool beans, let's do it. So they bring Fisty over to LSD. So less than probably a week of me actually coming back from my travels and deciding I wanted to play, I was now in LSD. I start building up a single marching attack because I needed to get server wings. Now, out of all my accounts, Fisty was the only one that didn't have server wings. And that was actually the best part of Fisty, because once I get server wings, now I'm eligible for king. Fisty had never been king. So my goal was to get server wings, get promoted to king, which makes me the R5 of their alliance, and take it over. I thought, well, how do I get server wings on this really small account? I built this one march, this really good defensive march. I built that, and I went on a rampage. The SVS of Thanksgiving weekend, I knew would be a downtime. I got in there, and on a 4-year-old server, my first time out, I got server wings. I got top 4 with an account with less than 400 million power on an almost 4-year-old server. If that don't tell you motherfuckers I'm good, I don't know what does. I don't know what does. I get server wings. Now, obviously, I want to be king. but I don't want to express that to anybody. So I'm like, yay, yay, server wings. I open Wonder. I do the little, yay, thank you guys so much for helping me out. You motherfuckers didn't do shit I couldn't do by myself. Yeah, I do nothing I couldn't do by myself. I done did this shit so many times. I ain't the first server wings I done earned for an account, I promise. So I get my server wings. I enjoy my little celebration. Less than a week later. Now I'm in it for a little bit longer. I'm thinking like, yeah, maybe Christmas time, beginning of the year, I'll get to the point where I'll start hinting at becoming king. And sure enough, they're like, hey, do you want to be king? I'm like, oh, could I be king? They're like, oh yeah, you're eligible. And they put me up for king. Now, the reason I was very adamant about never asking for anything, if I ever asked for help to get server wings, it would have been like, oh, this guy's begging. He's kind of needy. I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be the guy that they thought they could manipulate. I wanted to be the guy that they looked at and they said, he's a small player who will be reliant on us. We'll help him get his server wings. We'll help him get his kingship. They wanted me to become king also because me becoming king means they get to dictate what titles get passed around to the server. That's what they wanted. They wanted another level of control. And they thought they had a puppet they could run with. But you didn't. You didn't have a puppet. You didn't have a pawn. You had a king, motherfucker. And I took their shit. Now, I took it, man. I had a blast, man. I'm not going to lie. I went on a little victory tour. I sent out King's mails, man. I gave out random-ass titles all over the place. Passed out a bunch of awards, man. I thoroughly enjoyed myself as king. And to be fair, motherfuckers figured me out pretty damn quick. And apparently, the thing that gave it away, shout out to SWE, man. Dude, man, I know we have been in the same alliance for a long time, but I'll be honest. There's only a couple people on the server I actually respect their gameplay. It's you. It's Amid, obviously. Drezzy. Dutch, if he's not on an edible or something. And probably Banana. You all definitely are some of the best Evony players around. Hands down. I have no problem admitting that. Not better than me, but I'll give you guys credit where credit is due. And he goes, yeah, like, Fisty was always good at PvE. He wasn't really good at PvP. So he immediately messages me. He's like, hi, Prince, after I took over the city. And, man, I'm telling you, you got to just read. You just got to read this stuff for yourselves, man. It was interesting to see just how many people, well, like, regardless if they liked me or not as a player, it was very obvious that even my enemies respected me. And I'm not going to lie, that was somewhat flattering to see. Because at the end of the day, they know DX really isn't a person you want to fuck with. Because I simply just don't roll over, man. I don't. I'm a petty motherfucker. I'm petty. I'm damn near cancer, son. I'm damn near cancer. Petty as shit. I'll go out of my way. It's the principle. I once got into a fight over a dime. This is real life. I'm petty. Not because I was broke. Because I'm petty. So yeah, man, I took over. And just having those conversations, like some of these conversations I had with Chaps or Drew or Zeus, whatever the fuck he thinks he is, I mean, they were hilarious, man. And watching their reactions, watching the outrage, these guys were fucking pissed. Oh, they were pissed. Now, how did it end? It ended with them ultimately getting their Alliance City back. And a lot of people messaged me like, well, why didn't you disband the Alliance? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? The truth of the matter is, before I even set out on this escapade to take over their Alliance City, I always knew they'd get their Alliance City back. Why? Let's do some really rough math for you right now. So the biggest player on the 153 server, he's about 48 billion in power, right? So we're just gonna do some rough math. So if you have about 2,050,000 T14s, that's about 250 million in power. Now, 1,000 T14s costs around 22.5 million in total resources, right? So let's just take that 2,050,000, divide that by 1,000. That gives us 2,050. So if we take the cost of those 1,000 troops, that's 22.5 million, and we multiply it by the 2050, that gives us around 46.1 billion. 46.1 billion in resources, total resources, to get 250 million power. Right? And if we take that and multiply it times 4, so we're just getting straight to a billion now. That means about a billion in power cost us roughly 184.4 billion total resources. So a billion in power costs about 184.4 billion resources, right? We have a player that's 48 billion in power. So if you take 184.4 billion and you multiply it times his 48 billion, that comes out to around 8.851 trillion resources for this guy to be as strong as he is. Now, if you take the highest tier package, the $100 package USD, that comes with the 700 million resources, even if you're using a 2 times coupon, right? So you're doubling every single time you buy it. That would get you about 1.4 billion resources for $100. If you do the math, that 8.851 trillion resources you need divided by the 1.4 billion you get per $100, and this is once again depending on you having a coupon every single time that you do it, it's going to cost you roughly $632,000 USD. There are players that are spending $600,000. And look, I'm not going to shame nobody about what they do with their money. If you feel like you want to spend $632,000 on an NFT, my God, do I have an NFT to sell you? Go for it. Be my guest. The average that a developer makes in China, if you convert it to USD, is about 50 to 60,000 American dollars, right? This one player, this one whale, has paid for 10 of them in a year. You think if they call up support isn't going to move mountains for them? I took their alliance, and without them ever reaching out, without me getting a warning, without getting a flag on my account, they immediately put him back as the R5 of the alliance. It wouldn't have mattered if I disbanded it or did anything. They would have rebuilt that shit from the ground up for this motherfucker, because they're going to make him happy. They're going to make him happy. But see, the reason I put out this video is because I want you to know, first and foremost, if you're a small player, you do have importance on your server. You do. Your voice matters. Your opinions matter. Secondly, there's no such thing as an NAP server, because time and time again, when these players get upset, when they don't get their way, they'll just threaten to burn everyone down. It's best that you just bubble all the time. Matter of fact, when I took their alliance, that was the first thing they said. Like, oh, if we don't get our alliance back, we're just going to burn the whole server. B.O.B. You fucked up, and you want to blame the whole server because of it. Sounds insane. Sounds insane. So, that's where we netted out. I ended up losing the alliance. I'm still currently king. So the hope is to get this video out tomorrow before I lose my kingship. I'm KOS, but I'm be honest, bro, I'm not worried about being KOS. That means nothing. Don't never touch a hair on my head. Not too worried about it. Even with 4.8 billion, unless he makes them take my bubble off, pull down my dress. I'm sure he's paid to have a dress pulled down a couple times in his life. I'm not too worried about it. But what I did gain is infamy. I think this may make me the most infamous player to have ever played Evony. And I'm good with that. And to be honest, it made for a really entertaining story. Sometimes a moral victory is a victory nonetheless. See, I don't need to be stronger than him or watch his city on fire. I don't need to see all that. That's like me getting mad that someone is building a house next to me, right? Like they're building $1 million house next to me. And then I go by and just say, well, I don't like that you're building this $1 million house. I don't know how it's going to affect my property values. Like, well, No one really gives a fuck how it affects your property value. You know why? Because this is $1 million house. No one gives a fuck how you feel. It's $1 million house. Who do you think they're gonna listen to? Just like it is in the real world. Who do you think they're gonna fucking listen to? But don't be afraid to push back. Don't be afraid to push these motherfuckers buttons. Don't be afraid to do that shit. As long as you can get a couple bubbles here and there, you spend $5 here, $5 there, man. You can keep those motherfuckers on their heels all day long. Because ultimately, what happens on all these servers is eventually people get bored and they leave. And when everyone leaves, when everyone is done playing that game, it's just you. It's just you on that server. And if Evony ever closed down and they ever get raided by the police, all your money goes with it. So hey, I'm not gonna money shame you. I might intelligent shame you because I think you're dumb as shit. But I'm not gonna money shame you. Do your thing, man. If you want to be a sex tourist in Thailand, go for it. Your money, spend it how you want it. But one thing you'll never be able to buy is integrity. The one thing you'll never be able to buy is King DX. Bitch, I ain't for sale. I don't move when you say move. I don't jump when you say jump. You drop something, I'm sure as fuck not picking it up. And you'll always remember, no matter what happens, you'll always have to remember this time. You'll have to remember this time when a motherfucker said, is that your shit? Got it. Got your shit. Got you, bitch. Man, that's the story. I hope you all truly enjoyed it. You know, I do have one last Evony video that I will put up. Before the end of the year, I did make a video on the most advanced battle tactics you can do in Evony. And when I say advanced, I mean truly advanced. I'm talking about attacking from different angles, hiding troops behind certain enemy models, like everything you can imagine, like the ultimate attack strategy. It doesn't talk about how you attack with troops. Like, oh, if they're holding it with siege, use this. Like, I'm not talking about that because that shit changes. And to be fair, I've looked at the code a couple times. That shit's always changing. Like, they're actually always behind the scenes changing shit, like, consistently. And you're in so many battles, you don't notice it, but they're changing stuff behind the scenes all the time. So trying to figure that out is always going to be a needle in a haystack. They're always going to move the goalposts just a little bit further to make it harder for you. So I wouldn't worry about that. Worrying about how to engage, when to engage, who to engage, those are the most important things you need to know if you want to be successful in Evony. So to celebrate me being done with Evony, if I get just a few more subscribers, we can just get to 100 to what? I think a K. I think we're at like 900 or something right now. If we just get to a K, 1K, I will drop that video for you all. It will be hopefully not as long as this one, but it will be in depth. You will definitely learn something that you didn't know. And I'll put it out just because, hey, that's just the type of guy I am. But I suggest if you want some free accounts, better get it now. I got a feeling this is going to make its way back to Evony. And once it gets translated, and then once they have to retranslate it because these motherfuckers don't know shit other than money and dollar signs, then they might try to make some changes. But don't worry, I got extras if you need them. Just hit me up. Well, that's it for me. Thanks for listening. I am King DX. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button. And hopefully, I'll be back with one last Evony video before I wrap things up. Until next time, later.